Ladies and gentlemen, sports fans alike, welcome to another edition of Bill Swirsky's Sports Talk Chicago, one of the couple, two, three best podcasts around. So sit back, grab yourself a cold one and a Polish sausage, park your keister in the French room, and listen to Bill Swirsky's Sports Talk Chicago.
In Chicago, you know that all sports rock. The Bears, Hawks, Bulls, Cubs, and Sox. Pick your favorite, you can choose, as long as the Packers lose. For everything you need to know, it's Bill Swirsky, Sports Talk Chicago. Bill Swirsky, Sports Talk Chicago.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Bill Swirsky Sports Talk Chicago. This is your hosts, Alex and Sean. On this episode, we're going to be talking about Laurie's development, Corey Crawford being back, and John Paxson and Charles Barkley, the GOATs. But first, I'd like to thank our sponsor, the Rockford Ice Hogs. If you're not familiar with the Rockford Ice Hogs, they're the AHL minor league affiliate of the Chicago Blackhawks. What does that mean for you? You get to see the stars of tomorrow today at family-friendly, affordable prices. The season is quickly wrapping to an end, so don't miss out. Head on over to icehogs.com, get yourself a hat, shirt, jersey, ticket, and more. Tell them Swirsky Sports sent you. How's it going, Alex?
Oh, I am just peachy.
This is one of those weird times of the year, and unless you have a team that's really good in basketball or hockey, you're really sort of in limbo here.
Yeah, I mean, if you really pay hard attention to the combine, which I really don't pay that much attention to, there isn't much football news. I'm just glad the Bryce Harper, Manny Machado stuff is over, frankly. I think that's one of the biggest stories out there. Other than that, it looks like the Blackhawks are... And any sort of playoff hope they had, which wasn't much, is just, it's completely gone now. So, yeah.
And now we can get on to Dallas Keuchel watch.
I don't think the Cubs or Sox are getting him.
I was just joking. Normally I'm a big combine guy, but it's really hard to muster the energy when the Bears don't pick until the third round.
Right. So it's not like you're looking at a potential top 10 pick here.
Yeah, I am just, it is just, man, I literally can't muster the energy. And I normally love this time of year. I love scouting and I love watching tape and the combine. And I'm just like, well, what are the odds that I see who the Bears draft in the third, fourth, fifth, and sixth rounds on tape, and like, so it doesn't matter. So
kind of a good problem to have when you think about it. It means your team is finally good again, and that you're not looking forward to just, oh yay, here comes the draft. Who are we going to draft to possibly make this a good team? And knowing that those first few picks are going to a very worthy cause.
Yeah, I'm not even upset about it. It just sort of more factual. I'm right. Fine with it. It frees up a lot of time this time of year for doing other stuff, like getting ready for Captain Marvel.
Oh yeah, that's coming. And one of the things I'm really looking forward to about that movie is, the end credits scene is going to have something to do with Endgame.
Yes, I'm so stoked on this movie, and it can't get here soon enough. And I don't care. I know there's a lot of people that are butthurt. I don't know, because it's about a woman. I guess
I don't see why people are mad about that. We've had Black Widow, we've had Scarlet Witch.
Well, because this is the main character. The primary character is a woman.
So what?
I mean, we had Wonder Woman.
Right, exactly. We had Wonder Woman, and I'm really not a big DC universe guy, but that was probably one of the DC Cinematic Universe movies I actually liked as of recent.
Oh yeah, I mean, other than the Christopher Nolan Batman movies,
I count that separate.
Yeah, I do too, because they actually considered a different universe.
Right, and Dark Knight is probably one of my all-time favorite movies.
Oh, I can still remember going to see that in the theater.
Me
So
too.
good. so good. But Wonder Woman was good. Wonder Woman was good. I mean, does it compare to the Marvel movies? No, because Marvel movies are just so good. But compared to the other DC movies, it was fantastic. And
here's a question.
Sure.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead first.
Oh, I was just going to say, I don't expect any drop off with Captain Marvel. I expect it to be fantastic.
Well, that kind of leads into my question. When was the last time there was really a bad Marvel movie?
Iron Man 3.
Okay, I didn't think that was great. I didn't think it was bad. I thought 2 was worse than 3, honestly. I couldn't take Mickey Rourke seriously as Whiplash.
So the problem was for me is that with Whiplash, I don't know, he was okay.
My Boyd.
I mean, but Iron Man 3, there was a lot of issues that I couldn't get into it, and it was far and away from me the most disappointing moment I've had in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
It's down there on my list as well. I just thought that, to me, if I were to look at probably my least favorite Marvel Cinematic Universe movie, would probably be the second Thor movie. It's just very forgettable, and you really kind of don't need it. I mean, I really thought the first 2 Thor movies really weren't that good. And then Thor Ragnarok came around, and I think Thor Ragnarok is one of the best Marvel movies ever.
See, I agree with you on Thor Ragnarok, but I loved the first 2 Thor movies. I know a lot of people hated the second one, but I don't understand it. I liked it. But for me, Iron Man 3, I think the main storyline that they used, I didn't like it in the comic books to begin with. But for me, they teased it was going to be the Mandarin and Ben Kingsley as the Mandarin. You're like, oh man, this is going to be awesome. And then they just yanked the rug out from under you. And
yeah, that twist was,
and that sucked. I was so annoyed by that.
There was a decent build-up in that movie, and then that's kind of when things fell apart.
Yeah, but other than that, I mean, the Marvel Cinematic Universe has been pretty on point, and I don't expect a drop-off with Captain Marvel. So, especially since, I mean, I don't know if this is a spoiler alert, but we're pretty sure that she's going to be the savior against Thanos.
Yeah, and I also have that feeling that she's going to save Tony himself. You know, he's floating around in space. There's so many things that I'm looking at. I'm like, what are we gonna see? How does Ant-Man get out of the quantum realm? That's a big question I have. Here is something, I don't know. You've seen Ant-Man and the second Ant-Man and Wasp, right?
Yes.
And you've seen the ending scene where he's in the quantum realm and everyone else is killed by Thanos.
Correct.
What somebody pointed out, and this was just in a YouTube comments section, that as soon as their screen, watch the screen, as soon as the radio fails out and they're killed by Thanos, you see like a big bright kind of flash in the back of the quantum realm. Kind of interesting, isn't it?
I had to go back and look at that.
Because wouldn't that kind of indicate that's the exact moment Thanos snapped his fingers? Because as soon as that went dead, they would have started fading away. That's when Thanos snapped his fingers. That's when you saw a big reaction in the background. It was kind of subtle, but it was kind of like a poof.
Huh. I'm going to have to go back and watch that, because that's interesting.
Yeah, so, I mean, obviously he gets out of the quantum realm because you see him in the trailer, because he interacts with Black Widow and Captain America. But there's that can't just be there just to be there coincidentally. There has to be a reason for that.
That's the thing with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, is everything means something.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's an inside joke, whether it's a nod to the comic book fans, and goes no further than that. Whether it's a tie-in, there's everything means something.
Right. And things like that are like very, very, very subtle. But yeah, as soon as he snaps his fingers, you see the background of the quantum realm. You see a lot of things going on in the background. It's like a lot of flashes, a lot of like moving things, like an increase of where it normally is. But yeah, so go back and watch that.
Yeah, maybe I'll do that tonight. But I read a funny thing online. It was like, I want to see before, the second half of Infinity War Endgame, there to be a recap of everything that's happened up to that point, but done by Lewis from Ant-Man and Wasp.
Huh.
I'm like, oh my God, that would be so
I know,
awesome.
right? That would be.
With the flashbacks and the frantic talking and the hodgepodge storytelling. I'm like, that would be so funny.
That would be funny. I'm watching that. I'm watching that final scene now on YouTube, and again, it's very subtle, but it's noticeable when you go back and look at it. You'll see a lot more in the background, a lot more bright colors and flashing and moving things right at that moment. It's very subtle, but if you look for it, you'll see it. One more Marvel movie question for you is, if you had to pick your top 3, what would they be? Because for me, that's a really tough question.
Wow. You give yours first. I need to think about this for a second.
Okay, so I would definitely put the first Iron Man in there because that's what got me into this stuff, and it was a fantastic movie. Probably the first Avengers movie. And then, boy, I may consider, I could go Thor Ragnarok, I could go Spider-Man Homecoming. I'm not the biggest fan of Age of Ultron. I don't think it was bad, but I think there are plenty of other movies better than Age of Ultron.
Yeah, that was one of the weaker ones for me.
I thought Civil War was better than Age of Ultron.
Yes. I'm gonna go with. Man, this is a tough one. I'm gonna go Captain America: The Winter Soldier.
Oh, that's another great one.
Wow.
Is there one you would absolutely no doubt put in there without put away the fear of leaving out a movie? What is a movie you absolutely know you love from the Marvel Cinematic Universe?
Winter Soldier, I think, is like my go-to.
Okay.
I'm gonna put Ant-Man and the Wasp.
Okay.
And I'm going to put Guardians of the Galaxy.
There's another one. Okay, I have an unpopular opinion. I think Guardians 2 is better than Guardians 1.
I agree. But it's one of those, like, I'm going to put, like, it's Godfather 1, Godfather 2 for me. Like, it's not like, oh, one's superior, like super superior to the other one. It's just, they're both really good. I went with the first one just because it was the first one.
And that's fair. And the first one is a great movie. I just liked 2 even better because I loved Kurt Russell as Ego. I really loved him in that role. I would go on and say Ego is probably my favorite MCU villain, or at least one of my favorites. Also, Baby Groot is really funny, so that's always a good.
Baby Groot.
Always a good. Yeah. I am Groot. Yes. I am Groot. Yes. I am Groot. No. That's just great. And one of the things I love about the Guardians movies is that they have killer soundtracks. That classic music they play, I love it.
I am going to throw this out there, and I don't know if it will ever happen, but I really, really want there to be a Morbius the Living Vampire movie.
Really?
Yes. I love Morbius the Living Vampire.
I think that would be a great cult movie.
And I want it to be done not in the timeline of this, like I want it to be done like in the 70s, like the late 70s. I also want a Sinister Six movie. I don't care if it's tied into a Spider-Man movie or if it's its own Sinister Six movie, but I want all the Sinister Six.
I have heard other people online asking for that. So I don't think you're the only one. So I get that. Question. Did you see the new Spider-Man movie?
The Into the Spider-Verse?
Yes.
I haven't. We were going to go see it in the theater and something came up and then didn't go again. But once it comes out on Blu-ray, I'm going to go buy it.
See it, buy it. It's fantastic.
That's what I heard. I mean, it won Academy Award, so
it is fantastic.
Yeah. But I would be so like beyond excited to see a Sinister Six movie. And like there's different iterations of it. I don't even know which. I would probably go with the second iteration, which is Dr. Octopus, Electro, Hobgoblin, Mysterio, Sandman, and Vulture. So it doesn't have Kraven the Hunter.
Mm-hmm.
Kraven's, he's meh. I just don't know what he'd be like in a Marvel type movie. But Hobgoblin, thumbs up.
You know, it's funny when anyone says Green Goblin, I will always think of Willem Dafoe.
I can right there with you.
And you know what? I don't care what people say. Those Tobey Maguire movies, they were my childhood. The first two.
The third one is so bad.
Oh, it's awful. It's pure crap.
I still remember when I saw that in the theater because I didn't know it was going to be bad. And the first two I really enjoyed. I mean, going back, you know, they're kind of campy, but I still will watch them.
They're nostalgic.
Yeah. And the third one came out, saw it in the theater, and at one point somebody just stood up and they're like, "What is this crap?" And then walked out. And
it was
like,
bad.
Yeah, I feel that guy.
And you know what? Spider-Man 2, admit it, Doc Ock was awesome in that movie.
Oh, he was fantastic. That was like if they made a Sinister Six movie or added him into, you know, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I would totally be fine if they used that same dude and the same look.
He was great actor in that movie. The look, like you said, was perfect because it was kind of like mad scientist / broken down human / like confused with power and new technology. It was a great blend. It wasn't like some generic villain. There was more of a human element to him, but he was just so great.
Yeah, see, I loved that was fantastic, but Electro played by, was it Jamie Foxx? The other iteration of Spider-Man movies that I didn't really pay attention to.
Yeah,
looks
I
terrible.
didn't either.
And as much as I loved Spider-Man Homecoming, Vulture is my favorite of the Spider-Man villains. And I'm super partial to the old school look with his like bald old man with a big nose and a green outfit with wings and feathers around his neck. Like I don't care how stupid that would look in a movie. When they updated Vulture, I was like, And I understand that there was 0% chance that they were going to make the Vulture look like my Vulture growing up. Just like they're not going to do Electro with a giant like lightning bolt headpiece on his head. Like they're just not going to do that. It just
Imagine Michael Keaton in that costume.
with a bald cap on. Like it's like one of those things like you knew they couldn't do it. You knew they wouldn't do it. And you went in there knowing that there was no chance, but you were like, I'm still disappointed. I'm still disappointed in you, Marvel.
I get what you're saying, but at the same time, I thought they modeled him into the MCU perfectly. Like he fit into the MCU perfectly. His costume, his ability to fly was salvage technology, and that was his main thing, was the Rob Stark technology. Like that I really liked. And here's what I'll say. I think Tom Holland is a fantastic Spider-Man. Because, look, the Andrew Garfield pretty boy stuff was just blech. Tobey Maguire was great because he was an awkward, dorky kid, which is what Peter Parker is. But let's face it, in the Tobey Maguire movies, Peter and all his friends, who are supposed to be like in high school and college, they all look like in their late 20s, early 30s. Tom Holland embraces more of that high school charisma because he's that age.
Yeah, Tobey Maguire was very 90210 high school.
Right.
Where there's some 45-year-olds in high school.
Well, that's the thing with some of those old high school movies. A lot of them are played by people much older than high school.
Yeah, that was a thing back in the day.
Even in recent years. Because, look, Remember the Titans is probably one of my all-time favorite movies, but you gotta admit, it is kind of funny sometimes when a lot of those main characters are clearly older than high school.
Oh, Remember the Titans.
Love that movie.
I haven't seen it in forever.
Denzel Washington is my guy, and like Coach Boone is just, he's the greatest.
But yeah, for all those of you out there that are like, oh my God, they're talking nerd stuff. Just Google Vulture Spider-Man and see the costume that I'm talking about. And it is very nostalgic to me because that is the Vulture I grew up with. And you're going to look at it and be like, oh my God, if they would have made Vulture look like that in the movie, it would have made $14 and it would have all been from Sean.
Well, my dad, he's a huge Spider-Man comic guy, and he's got a few posters. He's got Captain America, he's got Spider-Man, he's got Batman, he's got Superman. And one of the collector pieces that he has that Vulture on it. So I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, because I mean, I'm old, so that's what I grew up with. And I grew up like looking at comics from the late 70s, early 80s. Some were hand-me-downs, some were, just as a little kid, we'd go to the flea market and I would buy up, all the old Spider-Man comic books. And, even if they, I read them where you didn't have all the story arcs. You'd get like issue, 103 and then issue 97 and issue 184. And you could not complete a story arc, but I just read them all. And, the piecemeal ones, and just had these favorite characters and worked the stories out in my head. And that's the ones I grew up with. So those are just sort of nostalgic.
Yeah, and that's completely understandable. I'm sure it's the same way with a lot of people and a lot of other superhero movies. I mean, they've had to make a lot of alterations, these classic superheroes, to fit a more realistic / certain universe. And I mean, look at Spider-Man. He's made to fit the cinematic universe by having strong connections with Tony Stark. He had the suit built by Tony Stark. And, I'm actually okay that they didn't really do a background story for Tom Holland's Spider-Man, because I didn't really think it was that necessary. We all pretty much know how Spider-Man becomes Spider-Man. So
we all know it's beaten to death. It's just the same with like, oh, Batman, like if we have another scene where Batman's mom's pearls are slowly falling to the ground in the alley behind the theater, like I never need to see that again. There'll be generations before anybody doesn't know what happened to Batman's parents.
Exactly. Or you see him fall down into the well with all the bats.
Yeah. We don't need to see any more about Uncle Ben.
No. Yeah, we never hear from Uncle Ben or hear about what happened to him in the MCU, and I have a theory that Uncle Ben was killed by a criminal that had one of Vulture's weapons. I have no basis for it. I just think that's what happened.
I don't know. But let's loop this back to sports. We are off on tangents, but we'll have more tangents next time when we discuss Captain Marvel, because I'm sure you will see it.
We should probably have Big Dave and C-Dub on for that.
I think so. We'll have to hit them up. To do a Captain Marvel special. So where do you want to start?
Well, I got some baseball thoughts.
Do we want to beat up the White Sox? I mean, sorry, not the White Sox. Not the White Sox fault. Not their fans' fault. Do we want to beat up the White Sox front office?
Yeah, that, and express a little bit of Cubs thoughts on the same topic as well.
Yeah, let's start beating up with Kenny.
Yeah.
Kenny. So we've already expressed our thoughts on the whole missing out on Manny Machado, and I think the internet pretty much beat up on the White Sox as well, and the media. And Kenny is absolutely just mind-boggled that people are calling the White Sox cheap. And it's mind-numbing to think that he's confused by this. The comments he made, like, he still just doesn't get it. Sure, you offered a guy $250 million, and that's a lot of money. We get it. But look at the landscape of baseball. And there are teams that are spending that whole entire amount of that you offered Manny Machado. That's what their annual payroll is. And you balked at ponying up $50 more million over 10 years to make that happen and get the guy you wanted. That's where the cheap comment comes in, is you offered it to him as, well, if when you're in your mid 30s, you get 500 some at bats, then you can earn it. That's ridiculous. And then to keep throwing around, well, he could have made more money with us. We're still surprised. Well, guess what? You knew what the contract offer was, and you could have looked at it and been like, okay, even though we think this is better because he has the potential to get more money, if the player and his agent are saying otherwise, it doesn't matter what Kenny Williams thinks. You're trying to sign that player, not dumb Kenny Williams.
Look, the fact of the matter is, him talking to the media has made this situation worse. The fact that he will try to tell you that their offer was better when it wasn't, he tries to be like, yeah, well, he could have earned more here. Why are fans so mad? Why are we cheap? Just look at your history and look at your offer at Manny Machado. Now, if you would have given Manny Machado the same exact offer and he would have gone to the Padres, then it's pretty clear that he would have rather played for the Padres. But even so, you would still try to up that offer, right? If you really wanted him?
Yeah. And then you double down. You're like, okay, we lost out on the guy we really wanted, and we looked cheap and stupid in front of the rest of the baseball universe. So let's double down with, we're going to respond by saying we're out on Harper. We're out. We're not even going to throw our hat in the ring. Like, that is mind numbing. And when you look at the Harper deal, it's a lot of money, but it is per year, like the average value is a whole lot less than Nolan Arenado's extension or Manny Machado's contract.
The money itself is a steal, an absolute steal. Yeah, no opt-outs makes it riskier. Yeah, 13 years makes it riskier. That's the risk right there. But if we're just talking green, It's a steal. His base salary this year is going to be roughly $10 million. You add the signing bonus and luxury tax salary on top of that, payroll salary. It all comes out to $11.5 million, roughly. 11.5. And then the next year, you got $26 million plus the signing bonus. That's 27. Literally from 2020 to 2028, he'll be making roughly $27.5 million. For Bryce Harper, that's a steal.
Yeah, it's mind-numbing that they couldn't pony up for that. And I get you're going to be paying this guy, an average, average out, it's $25 million per year, average annual value. So you're paying a guy $25 million when he's 39. All right. You're probably not getting the best value of that. But if you think about it, is what are contracts going to look like in 13 years? That might still be a bargain.
Sure. I mean, things can be completely restructured with, the new CBA, but even so, I mean, look, let's say Bryce Harper plays in his prime for another, 5 years? That's around maybe 6 or 7. So about half that contract. So let's say he's playing his prime to about age 34. That would be 2027. And you would have, 4 years left on that deal. Let's say you go on multiple playoff runs, you win a couple championships, and you get a few MVP-like years out of Bryce Harper. You would take those last few years if that meant him quickly declining and being paid a lot of money and him being old. But wouldn't you take that for 7 great years of opening your championship window of Bryce Harper? I'd take that.
I would too. And you'd have to feel if you're the White Sox and you signed Harper to that deal, that you could sell it to your cheap ownership as a win. You're like, look, Nolan Arenado is getting paid like 33 million a year average value on his contract extension.
That sounds about right. Yeah.
Like 33.5 or 32.5, somewhere right around there. And then Manny Machado is averaging $30 million a year. We got this guy for $25 million a year. And you could sell that to your organization. And I don't know how Scott Boras is going to sell this as a victory when there was 2 big deals that were going to happen. And a third one came out of the blue and he got the worst of the 3. I don't know how you sell that as a win, but that's not my place. That's Scott Boras' job to do that.
Yeah, and speaking of Nolan Arenado, that extension he got takes the White Sox out of the running for Nolan Arenado next year.
Yep. And the thing is, if you're the White Sox, this sets you up with when are you ever going to get another superstar unless you drafted them?
Which, I mean, I think Eloy is going to be a superstar. I think Louis Robert, if he's healthy, can be a superstar, but he's a little while away. But still, you really want to add to your core a free agent. You look at the past few winners, that's what they've done. The Red Sox, they had their core, they added JD Martinez. The Cubs, they added John Lester. The Astros, they traded for Justin Verlander, and they signed Carlos Beltran, who was very old, very washed up, but he played a role, a leadership role in that championship team. The point is, you got to add somebody proven to a core. And I know the White Sox may still be a year out of serious contention, but there was the great opportunity there to add a player long-term who would be there for this entire rebuild coming together and into your contention years.
Yeah, it's not signing a 31-year-old when you're a year or 2 away. It's signing 26-year-olds when you're a year or 2 away. Because guess what? Is they're going to fast track your trajectory, number one. And number 2 is in that year or 2 when you do arrive, then You're not just like, oh, we're ready to sit the table. We're ready to win a World Series, and you already got the guys in place, and they're still early in their prime. You missed out on that. That's why people are upset.
Right. And again, it doesn't doom the rebuild. It doesn't mean the rebuild will be all for naught. I still think it's going to work, but it's a big opportunity missed. The only bright side is next season, you don't have to worry about signing Nolan Arenado's brother's cousin's former roommate's friend. So you don't have to worry about that. But it's got to be so frustrating. And just to segue into the Cubs' perspective of this, a lot of Cubs fans are pissed. We all wanted Bryce Harper here on the north side. We wanted him hitting in between Chris Bryant and Anthony Rizzo. That would have made this club all the more better. And seeing the contract, it does sting a little because despite what Tom Ricketts says, we know they can afford that. Everybody knows they can afford that. And if the Cubs won another World Series with him, I wouldn't give a crap about the last few years on his deal, even if he was bad. You're going to be bad eventually. You might as well make the most out of this time now. But I'm moving on because I gave up on the Bryce. It was clear Bryce Harper wasn't coming here the past few months. So it wasn't like it sounded like they were truly in on him and then he ended up going to Philly. So it wasn't like a stab in the chest. It was a dream that faded away like half the people of the universe did when Thanos snapped his fingers.
Yeah, here's why people are upset. And I know there was an article, I forgot which newspaper wrote it, about how if the Cubs and the White Sox don't spend another penny, fans have no right to be upset about it.
Oh, that was Paul Sullivan.
Which is the stupidest article. I didn't even bother reading the article because the headline was so stupid that it drove me nuts. It is based on Forbes. Forbes estimates that in 2017, they don't have 2018 data yet, and clearly there won't be 2019 data yet because we're still in 2019 early. In 2017, the Cubs had the most operating income out of any MLB team.
No surprise.
And so it was over $100 million in operating income. Funnel that into signing Bryce Harper.
And you'll make that revenue back. I mean, did you see the ticket sales in Philadelphia? Did you see those numbers? The day they signed Harper, they sold 100,000 tickets.
Yep. And that's what happens. That's what happens.
Look, I understand the Cubs are spending a lot of money on this roster as it is. They have one of the highest payrolls in baseball. I get it. I get they're spending a crap ton of money on that ballpark, the renovations. I was just there the other day looking at some of it. I know they pay taxes in Chicago. I am not one to call the Ricketts cheap, but they were being cheap this offseason when I think even if you didn't get Bryce Harper, what's driving me more crazy is that they refused to sign a guy like Martin Maldonado, who you could use as a backup catcher, a veteran and a great defender. You could have signed Jose Iglesias to a minor league deal and jettisoned Addison Russell. You could have signed a Tony Sipp to your bullpen. Saying you don't have any money to do that, that's what angers me more than anything. I'm disappointed we didn't get Bryce Harper. I can move on from that. But if we're in the middle of the season and one of our problems is Victor Caratini isn't doing anything good and Wilson Contreras is getting beaten down again and fading away like he did last year, you had an easy solution right there that wouldn't have even cost you much in Martin Maldonado, but you're still going to cheap out on that. That goes too far.
I agree. It's just frustrating.
It is. But you know, there's nothing we can do now. Harper and Machado are where they are. I think it's good for baseball as a whole that they're not just ending up on the Yankees or the Dodgers or the Red Sox or the Cubs. You know, as a whole, it's good to see. Hey, here's the Padres. Let's see them be popular. Let's see them fill their ballpark. Let's see some of this wealth be spread a little bit. I mean, like you want all the wealth to yourself, no question, but just for the game of baseball, it's kind of cool to see other market teams, because then you don't get the whole, oh well, you just bought a championship because you're the Yankees. Seeing other teams spend money is at least good for the game, so I'll acknowledge that. But they are where they are. The Cubs have the team that they have. The Sox probably have the team that they have, unless they make some other move, but I don't know if that's going to happen. And this is what we're going to ride with. So,
Maldonado hasn't signed with anybody yet, has he?
no. And I almost want to just. I was tempted the other day because I was at Wrigley Field. I was tempted just to knock on the office doors, go into Tom Ricketts' office, and say, "Can you just tell Theo Epstein to sign Martin Maldonado?" And then walk out. Or plan B was make a sock puppet that looks like Tom Ricketts, go up to Theo Epstein's office, hide under the desk, except my hand would stick up, and pretend to be Tom Ricketts and say, "Oh yeah, you should probably sign this guy." That was my plan B, but
So this Nolan Arenado extension, how is this going to impact the Chris Harper? Or the Chris Harper. I was looking at a picture of Bryce Harper and Chris Bryant together, and they got a Bennifer name. Chris Bryant, how is that going to impact the contract extension that the Cubs will hopefully sign with him? But who knows what happens when you have the agent that he does.
This is something I wrote about for Cubby's Crib the other day. I think it's more and more likely he's going to test free agency. Bryant says he's going to listen to offers. I mean, of course he's going to listen to offers. He's not going to sit there and say, "Oh no, I'm going to free agency. I'm not listening to any offers." He's not going to say that. He says he's his own boss, but I think he's going to test the market unless the Cubs really blow him away with an extension. And if they're going to extend him, look at Nolan Arenado. It's got to be more than that.
Yep.
He's not going to sell for equal or less. It's going to be more
Absolutely.
with the agent he has, with the player he is.
And it's something the Cubs, the realization that they have to come to is, here's the options they have. They sign him, they lock him up now. So you sign him to a long-term deal, making him, for the lifetime of his quality years, him being a Cub, and you pony up the money now. Or you ride out the years of arbitration that you have and just get the escalations in salary, and then when he tests free agency, try to outbid. But at that point, you got to look at how old he is, and you got to look at how old he is, and you be like, well, what kind of contract are we going to assign him to? You could trade him and be like, you know what, he's going to be out of our league. Let's get a ton for him. Or you can hold back and wait for this, pending baseball strike. What is it? 2 more years on the collective bargaining agreement. You could wait and say, we're going to wait for this new collective bargaining agreement and see what the cards hold for us and how that's going to impact contracts.
Yeah, it's going to be something that people are going to be thinking about from now until then. And I mean, it's weird to think that we're going to be freaking out over a Chris Bryant contract that he still has 3 more years of control of before he even gets there. But these are things you got to think about in terms of your future.
Yeah. And it's hard to prognosticate like that. Because you don't know. I mean, is this going to be is there going to be a strike? And they're talking now about strike. If there's a strike, is it a short
It's
one?
looking more and more likely by the day.
Is it an ugly one? How drastic is this new collective bargaining agreement going to be? So how is that going to impact the salary cap? There's no salary cap, but how is it going to impact how much you're allowed to spend? Are they going to implement a salary cap? Are they going to implement a salary floor? Are they just going to keep the luxury tax and increase, penalties for you going over a certain amount. Are they going to put a cap on, are they going to do like hockey where they monitor, how long the deal is and, try to limit that so there's no more of these 10 plus year deals? I don't know. I have no idea. And so it's going to be interesting. And, for me, I would just like to see Chris Bryant locked up, give him a 10-year deal. How old is he now?
26, 27, around there.
Give him a 10-year deal, lock him up for as a Cub, and whatever it costs, it costs.
Yeah, he's the most talented guy on your team. He's probably the most important player on your team. You have to think about extensions with multiple guys, but Bryant's kind of the biggest, most important one. They're all kind of ending in the similar time frame. Javi, Rizzo, Bryant, all those guys. But he's probably the biggest one to think about first.
Yeah, you have to. So I don't know. It's this could crumble real quick. You don't figure things out.
Yeah. But hey, at least no matter what, we'll get to enjoy 3 more years of Bryant, who is absolutely mashing right now in spring training. So that's a nice sign.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy with what the Cubs are doing in spring training. Hopefully that means they're going to come out firing in the early part of the regular season.
It's important for them to get off to a big start this year with this division.
I agree. They can't be trailing the whole time. They've got to come out strong, and I understand sort of what Joe Madden was talking about in previous years, where it's early in the season, blah blah blah. Like, you don't want to put so much pressure on yourselves early in the season because it is a long season, and you can't. NFL is a fairly short season. You've got the pressure every week, but it's one game a week for 17 weeks with a week off. Baseball, it is a grind, and if you have that immense pressure of every day is a must win for 162 games, like that's brutal. Like, so you can't make it too much pressure, but you can't slack off like you have and play mediocre baseball. And you could have put away that division earlier on, and you just didn't. I think you just need to come out stronger. And it's got to be some sort of balancing act of not over pressuring young players, but also realizing that, losses shouldn't be no big deal.
Right. That's how you got to look at it. I think another thing for the Cubs is they need to get a better start in terms of their starting pitching, because the past 2 years we have seen the starting pitching start really slow. They were out by the 5th or 6th inning, and the bullpen had to work so hard early on. By the end of the year, they were just toast. The starting pitchers have to be effective from the beginning.
Yeah, agreed. And I think that means that the starting pitchers have to do something in spring training. We've seen the veteran pitchers get a little bit of more slow start and ease their way into the season. And I think that can't be so relaxed this year. We need everybody to be mid-season form come, week 2 of the season, week 1 of the season.
Absolutely. You remember 2017, that was really frustrating because Lester had a pretty down year. Kyle Hendricks had some injury issues early on. And even so, when he was pitching, it was off to a slow start like last year. John Lackey really took a dip because he was old. You didn't have Jose Quintana yet, and you had Brett Anderson for like 5 starts until they just cut him. So that was a real big issue in 2017, and in 2018, you saw Yu Darvish go down. You saw Lester being effective, but you saw struggles from Kyle Hendricks early before he came back and absolutely dominated the second half. You didn't have Cole Hamels yet. So you had your issues. You had your issues, and you just want things to be a bit smoother. And you look back at 2016, the beginning of that season, they just didn't get off to a hot start. They absolutely steamrolled their competition. So there really wasn't much pressure on them. There's going to be much more of that this year.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. There any other Cubs things you want to talk?
I guess I'll just note that it's really good to see Yu Darvish throwing 95 plus. Today he says he's felt good as he's ever had. He touched 97 on a fastball, 2 scoreless innings, no hits, 1 walk, 3 strikeouts. I really like the direction Yu Darvish is going, and I really hope it translates into the regular season because that's an important piece right there.
Yeah, and I'm glad he got rid of his translator to save the Cubs a few dollars.
Yeah, right? Too expensive.
Yeah, if he comes back and plays, because have we seen the best of him after his Tommy John surgery?
I don't know if we'll ever see like his first few years when he had sub-3 ERAs, but if he gives us 3.5 ERAs and 180 plus innings and over 200 strikeouts, we'll take that, right?
Yeah, I mean, but typically most guys after a Tommy John a lot of guys will see better numbers than they did prior. It's that second Tommy John that gets you. And he's really struggled staying healthy since then. And I just wonder if this is finally, he's going to be healthy and we're going to see what he's really capable of. And, if we get the numbers we expected when we signed him, that's just a huge blow to everybody else in the division.
For sure. And I definitely know what you're talking about when it comes to the the Tommy John surgery being stronger afterwards. That would be a point I would definitely make if he didn't have other injury issues. But I know what you mean.
Yeah. So it would be awesome to just see him just dominate and to watch Cardinal and Brewer fans just their heads explode.
Oh yeah, Brewers fans are really chirpy these days, and you kind of expected it. They stole our division on our field, and it's a rivalry. You expect it, but you want to get back on top of that rivalry.
I know the Brewers fans are starting to sound like Lions fans when they don't go 0-16. They get chirpy.
Yeah, it's gonna be an intense year. You think about that division, and every team is going to be in it.
Yeah, sorry, Pirates. I think you guys are going to be the bottom.
Yeah,
feeders.
They have some good pitching, but they really don't have much of a lineup that intimidates you. They're going to lose a lot of 2-1, 3-2 games.
Yeah, I don't think they're a bad team. They're in the wrong division at the wrong time.
Isn't it weird to think that the Pirates just a few years ago were a 98-win team, and then it all ended when the Cubs shut them out at home at PNC Park, and Arrieta just stuffed it up their bums?
Yeah. But what was Arrieta's quote before that game? I'm trying to remember. He had a really good quote.
Well, I remember Garrett Cole kind of flapping his gums, and then next thing he knew, Schwarber was hitting one into the river. I don't remember exactly what Arrieta said, but oh man, that was just gutsy.
So he said something like, he's like, it doesn't matter what they do. He's like, we're, man, I have to look up the quote. It was a good one.
So yeah, I'm looking at the Pirates depth chart now, and It's a solid team. Tyone, Archer, Williams, Musgrove, Lyles, Kingham, Brault, Davis. Those are your rotation 1 through 8, that your options. And I think Trevor Williams is one of the most underrated arms in baseball. Chris Archer is probably one of the most overrated arms in baseball. He gets a lot of strikeouts, but he gives up 4 or 5 runs in 5-6 innings more often than not these days. But he's still a talented enough arm where he'll make a positive impact. Your big bats are Josh Bell, Gregory Polanco, Starling Marte, Corey Dickerson. There's just you look at this lineup and say there's really not a bat that overly intimidates you. Like, at least they used to have Andrew McCutchen in his prime. Probably the closest thing they have now is Starling Marte, but you look at that line, it's not a terrible lineup, but it's not one that's going to scare you.
It's not the 27 Yankees.
No, it's not. It's not.
Yeah, so I feel bad because I think they're just going to get run over in this division because the Reds are coming on strong. The Cardinals always hang in there somehow. The Brewers are good. The Cubs are good.
And now they have Paul Goldschmidt. The Cardinals having Paul Goldschmidt, that's a problem.
I know. Grumble.
And Yasiel Puig with the Reds, he is going to rake in that ballpark.
Yeah, I know.
He's going to absolutely have a field day.
But
good for the Reds, honestly.
Yeah, they small market team deciding to put it together. That team they were gonna, I think we both thought that Joey Votto was just gonna be there spinning his wheels for his entire career, and they're really trying on that one.
Yeah, and they're getting creative too. It's not like they're just opening up a checkbook. They're making trades. They're finding ways to get these guys. I'm looking at their depth chart now. That's going to be a pretty solid offense because you have one of the best hitters ever in Joey Votto. You're going to add Yasiel Puig into that lineup in that ballpark. You have the most underrated productive hitter in baseball in Eugenio Suarez. And you have Scooter Gennett, who's really found a great, stroke of himself. And you got Tucker Barnhart, Scott Schebler, Winker aren't, bad depth guys. Jose Peraza. And their rotation, their ace is now Sonny Gray. He wasn't that great last year, but he's had a great career. I think he can, make a positive impact in Cincinnati. You have Alex Wood, who's very, very talented. The only problem with him is he's had injuries. And then you have Tanner Roark and Louis Castillo, who's a young pitcher, but has shown a lot of promise. And you remember all those years when the Reds bullpen was just the biggest dumpster fire ever. Raisel Iglesias is a heck of a closer. And they've added a few decent pieces in there. Do I think it's going to win the division? No, but they're definitely going to be competitive.
I fully agree. So do you want to talk Little Bears or Little Blackhawks?
Guess we'll go Blackhawks.
So the good news is Corey Crawford is back. The bad news is they collectively as a team pulled on their breezers and pooped on the ice against the Los Angeles Kings.
They honestly really should have lost both those teams to both the Ducks and the Kings, but thank God the Ducks are so bad, and Brandon Saad made a great play to Kane. But
yeah,
they should have lost
both. The way that this team as a whole just sets goalies up for failure. And this is not saying Corey Crawford looked good because he struggled himself, but man, they just set goalies up with, set them up to fail with so many opportunities, scoring opportunities that they just miss out on, whether being out of place, overskating, brain farts, lack of talent, a combination of those things.
Yeah, it's no bueno. You take away the hot streak from Kane and you realize that's pretty much what got you that win streak, and as well as Jonathan Tays playing very well and Brandon Saad and Alex DeBrincat playing very well. Those were the guys that kept you afloat. It was never this deep. I mean, look at the past few wins they had. They got outshot terribly, and you had like Cam Ward standing on his head. But you know what? You might as well at this point just call up Yoka Haru, bring Colin Delia back, just let the kids play the rest of the way. You're not going to the playoffs. You have virtually no chance of going to the playoffs.
Oh yeah, you have such a slim chance. So you're like 7 points out of a wild card right now, and there's like 17 games left. So you basically would have to go 13-4.
I'm looking at the odds now. If you want a good chance, aka above 75%, they have a 74.5% chance if they go 13-3-1. But if you want above that, they got to go 13-2-2 at least. And if you want to almost definitely make the playoffs, you more or less have to win out.
Yeah, I was just doing some quick math. I mean, 13-4, that's going to get you decent odds, but what's the point? If you get blown out by the Los Angeles Kings, who going into that game were on a 10-game losing streak, and in the first 5 minutes of the game they're up 2-0. Like, what are you really going to accomplish there?
I mean, it was a terrible, terrible game.
Yeah, I mean, this regardless of what happens in the last game of this Cali trip, it has not been a good trip, and it's not been a good week going up into this. And I guess for me, I haven't been that disappointed because honestly, I had no, delusions of grandeur that the Blackhawks were going to make the Stanley Cup playoffs and then, make some sort of run. I didn't even think they were going to make the playoffs. So I just been even keel about this. My concern is, they're losing ground on a great draft pick. And right now they are at 8th as it stands right now, 17 games left. They have the 8th best odds to get the number 1 overall pick. So it's about 6%.
That at least I can comfortably say that the chances are that pick was always either going to go to LA or Ottawa, but I know what you mean.
But we can safely say that they have better odds of getting the number 1 overall pick than they do of making the playoffs.
Oh yeah, absolutely, no doubt. I mean, no doubt. Yeah. I mean,
I just don't understand what bringing Corey Crawford back for these, last 17 games or so does. I just
maybe just to have him play.
Maybe
to keep him up to that. That's the only thing I could think of.
But I don't know. I don't know what the point is. Maybe it's one of those things is we do the right thing in the fans' eyes, but maybe it's also the right thing to do as far as our standings go because he is playing awfully rusty. And maybe putting Corey Crawford in really rusty is doing you a favor in the standings as far as draft pick wise goes over playing a surprisingly productive Cam Ward.
In my opinion, I would just honestly rather than play Delia mostly throughout. He's the young prospect you're trying to groom, and I don't think you can really prove anything else more in Rockford. We've seen Delia struggle the last few games, and I think he just needs to work that out on the NHL level. I don't really think him being in Rockford, as well as Yoka Haru and Delia have nothing left to prove with the Rockford IceHawks. They got to take that next step. It's got to be an NHL play. If Corey Crawford is playing to kind of just get back into things for next year, I can't understand that. But at the same time, I don't know. Is it really necessary? And look, you could probably just sit Cam Ward the rest of the season. I mean, the season's almost over. He's your technically backup goaltender, and he played well down the stretch, but playing Cam Ward really is probably one of the most meaningless things at this point, because he kept you somewhat in a playoff race for a while. That's over. It's not like he's playing for a spot on the team next year. He's going to be a free agent, and he's probably going to be gone. And it's not like you're going to be trying to win a lot of games either. So I don't see much point of playing much of Cam Ward for the rest of the way.
Yeah, it's frustrating. I would love to be a fly on the wall and in organizational meetings and coaching meetings, etc., in that building, just to get what the inside thoughts are of why some decisions are being made. I agree with you. I mean, what is the point of having Henry Jogaharju down in Rockford? Is not benefiting him, I don't think. If you're Jeremy Colleton and you think he should be playing better, I'm fine with that. If you say he should be playing better, these are things he should be better at, these are the things we need him to improve on, etc., I'm all fine for that. But how, when you are a bad team that's on the outside with your binoculars trying to look in, what is the point of playing in the AHL and when you could be playing in the NHL, doing the same thing and learning those and learning it under the coach that you're going to have next year?
Right, and it's not like he's unfamiliar with Jeremy Colleton. You know what I mean? Yeah, exactly. I don't really see what much more can be developed in Rockford than wouldn't be here at the NHL level. And you know what? If there's tons of growing pains and he stinks while he's learning, so what? The season, the outlook is over. You're just finishing up your schedule. Who cares if you suck with a bunch of young kids? Doesn't matter at this point.
Yeah, that's my point. Is, you know what, is have all the young kids playing together and, do some teaching. That was the whole point of Jeremy Colleton, is new system, teaching. Teach them under, your watchful eye. Don't send them down to Rockford under someone else's watchful eye. Is let them sink or swim in the NHL. I would rather somebody, struggle, but then you can figure out, oh, I think they're gonna figure it out, but they're struggling right now, sink or swim, rather than somebody just, like a Ryan Hartman, where they're dominating in the AHL, and then you bring them to the NHL, and you're like, oh, when are they going to be the guy that we expected them to be? I think in baseball we call them quadruple A players, and that's what you don't want, is somebody, all right, well, they're figuring it out in the AHL and they're succeeding, and then when we bring them up, up to the NHL level, and then they don't give you what you want. I'd rather know exactly what it is we have. And if we have to struggle to get to that point, okay, but I want to know where we're at and not have to play guesswork extrapolating into the NHL from the AHL.
Yeah, when you describe the quadruple A type player, AHL, NHL, it made me think of Brandon Peary's Blackhawks tenure.
It's frustrating. But one last thing I want to talk about with the Hawks is, are we going to see a Hart Trophy winner?
I think he deserves it. I don't know if he's necessarily going to win it.
I think it's tough. This is a bad team.
Especially if you don't make the playoffs.
Yeah, this is a bad team. It's real tough. I mean, but he's been so incredibly good. And he's such a big name. I think that lends some, possibility that happens. If he was an unknown player, or a less known player, or a super young player just ascending, that wasn't a marketed star, no chance. But he's a bona fide star. He's a face of a franchise, of an original six franchise. That at least gives it some possibility. I don't know. I have a hard time seeing it happen.
Yeah, same here.
I don't know. I guess I don't even know who I would probably give it to. Kucherov.
He's a points machine. A lot of those are assists, and he plays with a lot of high scorers. I don't want to take anything away from him, but it's not like Patrick Kane where he's scoring and getting assists and just doing it all over. But since he's getting points at such a high rate, I think Kucherov has definitely a good chance. Obviously, you have Alex Ovechkin, who scores a lot, but isn't really as much of an assist guy. He's just a pure scorer. I haven't really looked at Sidney Crosby's numbers, but I know Alex Ovechkin is up there in goals, and Kucherov obviously has like the most points in the NHL.
So I'm looking at a sports betting site, and you can bet on the Hart Trophy winners, and their top 5 by odds are Kucherov, Kane, McDavid, McKinnon, and Johnny Gaudreau. And honestly, if like Patrick Kane is hands down the biggest name of those players.
Right.
I mean, so if you're going just by, if you're boosting a player's probability by their name, Patrick Kane's got to get the biggest boost. Connor McDavid's got to get a bump. McKinnon, not a household name, and for casual fans, I don't think. Kucherov is, but there's just so many factors that go into it. I would probably say Kucherov is the most deserving, and his team is just dominating.
That team is incredible.
I'm gonna, if I'm a betting man, I'm gonna say Connor McDavid.
Yeah, I could see it.
But there's still 17 games left, so who knows? If somebody goes on some crazy streak or somebody falls flat, it could really turn this around quickly.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, no matter what, it was a treat watching Patrick Kane this year.
Oh yeah, he was absolutely dominant this year. Dominant. At one point in my life, and I will admit this, I thought the Blackhawks should try to trade him, and boy, was that a dumb decision, and I chastised myself for saying that. But yeah, so we're not going to see the Blackhawks make the playoffs. It's going to be watching the draft lottery and crossing fingers.
We'll see what happens. I think it's going to be a very active summer. I think they're going to try to trade some of those guys. They may try to trade Artem Anisimov because I think his no-trade clause expires. You may look and see what people give you for like a Gustafsson or a Murphy. It's going to be a very active summer. I think Stan Bowman learned his lesson from last year because, let's face it, he did nothing. He signed 2 washed-up players. That's all there was. We knew the defense was bad. There was no real attempt at making it better instead of signing Brandon Manning, which didn't help things at all.
But before we talk about the Bears, I want to bring up something I tweeted about. I alluded to it earlier. As a child, I grew up on a farm outside of Chicago in Mokina, Illinois. And I had 2 pet goats, and I had one was big and fat, and he was a black goat. I named him Charles Barkley. And I had one that was tiny and white, and I named him John Paxson. And those were my goats. And so I could always say that Charles Barkley is the GOAT because he literally was the GOAT. So yeah, I don't know why I've never brought this up before. It just sort of hit me. I was like, man, I forgot that I had a GOAT named John Paxson.
That's hilarious.
And I feel like he would be a better GM than our current GM.
Man, I agree.
Let's not trade for this player.
Did you have any horses on that farm?
So it was a horse farm. So my dad boarded and trained horses, but we didn't own any at that time. So yeah, my dad trained horses, and then we rented stalls to other people for their horses. John Lackey. Rented a stall to Buttercup.
So your family doesn't have that farm anymore?
No, we never owned it, and it was we rented
okay.
it, and my dad is now 80, and can barely walk, so he is in a home. So yeah, we do not have.
Who owns it now? John Lackey.
John Lackey. John Lackey.
The sign over the stall just says Buttercup Stall, and like the R's are like backwards.
And it's got her own spittoon in there, her chaw. She's got oats flavored chaw.
He has hooks on like the back porch for his spurs. Just every morning he goes back and selects this pair of spurs he's gonna wear that day.
Yeah, it's like when a businessman is looking at his ties. John Lackey's looking at which spurs he's gonna wear. He licks his finger and holds it up to see what the wind's blowing. So what size spur he's gonna wear?
Size 4 will do today. Clank, clank, clank.
He's like, that wind is a swirling. I better go up to a 6. Oh man, John Lackey,
our favorite man.
He's a legend. He is a legend. It would be amazing just to meet him and ask him about Buttercup and just watch the look on his face just turn from confusion to anger.
You see those bottom teeth just start to stick out.
His teeth grinding. They know about Buttercup.
He looks to the back of like whatever bar we're in, and he sees her like tied to the post. Excuse me, clank, clank, clank. Oh, get out of here! Get out of here! They know you now.
You ain't from PETA, are you? I don't want you be mad about my chaw spitting horse. All right, should we bring this home with a little Bears talk?
Sure.
So we talked about this on a previous show about how would Kyle Long be willing to modify his contract to stay with the Bears? And the big question would be, when you ask a guy to restructure his contract, is you've got to be willing to cut him, because it's a weird position to be in if you're like, hey, will you restructure your contract? And he's like, nah. If you're not willing to cut him, then you're just like, okay, that's a big matzo ball hanging out there. But I don't know what happened behind the scenes, but Kyle Long was willing to restructure his contract, and on Twitter announced that he wanted to be a Bear for life, which is a good thing.
Yeah, taking one for the team. I love it.
Yeah. So that gives the Bears a little bit of flexibility there. They haven't cut Parkey yet. They're going to wait and designate him as a June 1st cut because of, some cap implications that occurs there. But once you cut him and you make the next move that I'm going to talk about in a second, you're going to have like $14.5 million or so in cap room. And it's not the biggest amount of money, but it's especially when you don't have a first or second round pick. It gives you a good, a decent cushion for, being able to sign some players. And it looks like the free agent plan that we're going to see with the Bears this offseason is re-signing their own guys. And that first wave of free agency, I don't think we're going to see anything from the Bears. They're going to be quiet.
Well, it's considering all the moves they've made, considering where they were last year and looking into this year, I would say the cap room that they have is kind of impressive. Again, like you said, it's not a lot, but you would think they'd have a lot less with all those moves they've made. So credit Brian Pace.
Yeah, it's he's had a plan there, and it's you're right. It is not like endless space where you can go out and sign a ton of guys, but they don't have a lot of holes that they need to fill. They need, you feel like you've got your offensive line set as far as starters, your wide receivers set, quarterback set, your defensive line pretty set, your cornerbacks, your starting cornerbacks set. You've got a nickel back and a safety that you need to re-sign, but that's part of your plan. So the rest of it is getting quality backups in there, and that's kind of what you're addressing. And I imagine that you're going to see some those second tier, third tier free agents. We'll probably see some of those guys in there brought in that are on the 1 year prove it deals, or low cost, low risk, high reward type contracts. I expect to see some of those, but
absolutely,
it's going to be pretty quiet as far as we know the team that we're going to see on that field for the most part. But the biggest,
it's not going to be an overly active offseason.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, honestly, I think the biggest movement we're going to see is, I just alluded to earlier, is I fully expect Jordan Howard to get traded on draft night or earlier.
As much as it pains me to say, yeah, I agree. It's probably going to happen.
And here's why it makes sense. And I love Jordan Howard, and I don't want to see him go, but I think it benefits him because he's going to have a better opportunity to be a featured running back in the NFL, and he's a featured running back in the NFL. But for the Bears, he doesn't fit the scheme that they're trying to do. They're looking for a guy that's shiftier and quicker and can be featured, not like a third down dump off back, because Jordan Howard can do that. Not fantastic, but he showed improvement as being a third down, catch a screen pass kind of guy. They want a running back that can be a featured part of their pass scheme, downs 1 through 3. And that was not what Jordan Howard is. And Jordan Howard is a power back and not a shifty back, not a quick back. And plus he makes over $2 million in a year. So I just don't see any way that they keep Jordan Howard unless they just get no offers at all.
Right.
But
I'm with you there.
I have a feeling that they're going to move him, and you're going to get a mid-round pick. I mean, if you could get a third-round pick for Jordan Howard, you jump up and click your heels together. I imagine you get a 4th or 5th round pick for him. And I have a feeling that the pick that you get for trading Jordan Howard, you're going to utilize to pick up his replacement.
Yeah, absolutely. There'll be a lot of guys in that area.
Then there's a lot of guys in that area, and there's a lot of guys that are the same guy, and it's going to be just preference. Like there's not a lot. There's a bunch of guys that sort of fit the mold of what the Bears are looking for, and there's several of them. And here's the thing with running backs in today's NFL is you might get 1 or 2 that are drafted really high, And those are your Zeke Elliott's and your Todd Gurley's. Those are those guys. Then there's a bunch of guys that are getting drafted, third, fourth, fifth, sixth rounds. And those are the kind of guys that the Bears are going to be looking for. And I just, there's a bunch that fit the mold the Bears are trying to look for in this draft. And it doesn't make any sense. They're going to use the pick that they get for Jordan Howard to replace it. So it's going to be getting a guy that hopefully fits better into the system that you're trying to run for a lot less money, and you get control over him for more years, and he's younger. That's sort of the transaction that you're looking to have. You're not gonna get a net positive as far as draft capital for Jordan Howard. Is you're going to be swapping out one running back for another.
Yeah, that's exactly the way I see it.
So that's going to be the most interesting thing we're going to see. I know in a press conference that Ryan Pace hinted that, the Bears are going to be very smart with the draft, and they're not going to, they're going to scout like they have a first and a second and a third, all their picks, because they might be aggressive and go up and get back into the first or something. I don't know how you do that. I don't know what, they could have the guy that they absolutely fell in love with in the first round. And I don't know what sort of draft capital you have, or sort of capital you have for the Bears to be that aggressive to go up and get back into the first.
Yeah, it's gotta be tough.
You don't have a first rounder next year. I can't imagine, when you trade a pick into a future year, it's, as far as the value of picks goes in the draft value chart, it drops off precipitously when you trade a future pick, because something you're getting today is worth more than something you'll get in the future as far as the NFL is concerned. And, their third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh rounders aren't enough to package to go up into the first. They don't have a first next year. So if you're trying to trade a first from 2 years from now to get back in the first now, I just don't see that happening. And I don't see any players.
No, I'm not counting on it at all.
Yeah, and I don't know what players they have that they're going to, flip to move back up. So I think that's more of a...
There's no need
for it. And I think Ryan Pace is saying it more of a, not pigeonholing themselves into a position. Like, we can do whatever, we're not just going to stick by and, draft in the third. Yeah.
Them saying we're not ruling anything out doesn't necessarily mean they're going to do something. I say this over and over about any kind of sports front office.
Yeah. So, Ryan Pace, I don't think we're going to stand pat anywhere. But don't expect the Bears to move up into, way up anywhere.
We need a good kicker.
Yeah. And the thing is, if you look at kickers, yeah, we need a kicker. We got Redford Jones. And I don't know anything really about Redford Jones. Maybe he's going to be fine. Maybe he won't. But what is, if you draft a kicker earlier than the 6th or 7th round, I'm going to be annoyed. And I don't care what the need is. You don't draft a kicker. There's so many good kickers in the history of the NFL that were undrafted or drafted in rounds that are later than exist at this point. Because there's times I think went up 15 or 16 rounds that draft. But just bring in free agent kickers that are off the streets that didn't get drafted. If you're desperate to get one of those kickers, all right, then draft him with your 7th round pick. That's fine. I'm not going to be mad if you draft a 7th rounder pick, because you'll probably just draft some guy that you hear his name a couple of times and then boom, he's gone forever. But I'm fine with that. but bring in some competition. Don't be one of those weird teams that drafts a kicker super early because you're going to look dumb.
Who was it who drafted a kicker first round?
The Raiders.
That's right.
That was the
Sebastian Janikowski.
That was Sebastian Janikowski, and that was the year that Tom Brady went in the 6th round.
Yeah, that's right.
So Sebastian Janikowski can run out there whenever he plays Tom Brady and be like, "Remember when I was a 1st round pick and you were a 6th round pick? Eat it, Brady."
But we got Redford Jones opening up a can of beans on the field.
Yeah, like honestly, this is the thing with kickers is it's not like, oh, one kicker just has a superior strength of a leg over another one. They're kickers. Once you're at a certain level, I think you just, anyone can do the job. It's all mental. So it's finding a guy that can go out there and kick under pressure and kick consistently. And, there's guys that they get paid a lot because they've proven a track record of consistently doing it, but it's not like, so Robbie Gould, arguably one of the best kickers of the last generation, and just using him because his name's been bandied about, but there's guys that have way stronger legs than him.
Yeah.
But he's just shown that he's consistent with what he does. So it's just finding a guy that's consistent. At a certain point, there's more kickers with a strong enough leg to be an NFL kicker than there are jobs in the NFL. It's just meshing the guy that can do it consistently and with, without nerves, fitting him on your team. So I'm not worried. The Bears are going to bring in a bunch of cheap competition for Redford Jones. Cody Parkey will be gone, and they're not going to spend a ton of money on that position other than the dead money from cutting Parkey.
Exactly. The only thing I worry about is actually finding a kicker who could kick, but that's they'll do their best. So
yeah, we'll see. There'll be a bunch of weirdos, and we're going to get one of those weirdos on our team. And as long as he makes kicks and doesn't drink and drive, I'm all good.
Redford Jones.
I
got a can of beans over this fire. He's got like a polka dotted, like spotted handkerchief around his neck, like the red and white.
He's dressed like Buster Scruggs. He's got a big 10-gallon hat. They're like, "Hey, where's your helmet?" And he's like, "I don't need a helmet. This is a 10-gallon hat." Right, but the rules say you have to have a crossbar on there. That's what I think of the rules.
He's got his big giant iron boot that kicks.
And as soon as he makes the kick, he makes finger pistols and blows at the ends of them. I make kicks that jingle, jangle, jingle.
You see him struggling to walk limp because that iron boot is so heavy.
Redford Jones.
Legend.
Oh, man. Future legend.
Redford Jones.
Future legend Redford Jones. And if you were shopping next to him at the grocery store, you'd never know. Except for the sound of the boot dragging.
Clunk,
It's
clunk,
so heavy.
clunk.
Hey, Alex, can you give me a boost up into my pickup truck?
Your boot's kind of heavy. The top of his pickup truck has huge, like, novelty sized like horns on the top of them. So when he beeps, it's like.
He's got a rodeo bull mounted in the back of the flatbed of the truck.
If there's a car going too slow in front of him, a robot arm with a lasso comes out and just lassos the car and pulls it aside. Like, just imagine a robot arm coming out with like a white glove hand, just swinging a rope, and then whoosh.
Go gadget rope.
Exactly, yes.
Oh, Redford Jones. Oh man. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about?
No, I think I said my piece for the night.
All right, I think this is going to do it for this episode of Bill Swirsky Sports Talk Chicago. I want to thank everybody so much for checking out the show and listening. Please make sure you hit subscribe however you listen to podcasts, whether it's iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, or the TuneIn app. Follow us on social media at ShyFanPat1, at Swirsky Sports, Facebook.com/Swirsky Sports, SwirskySports.com. If you like the show, please share it with friends that you have that also like Chicago sports. That's how we grow the show. Thank you guys so much again for listening. And until next time, bear down.
Cubs win! What a lucky break! The good Lord wants the Cubs to win!
We thank Ditka and God for all they have provided.
Cubs win! Cubs win! Cubs win!
Oh, I don't want her. You can have her. She's a Packer fan. She can't fit in my van.
And she looks like
Remember, New Yorkers, smoking crack is not legal on planes. Bears 31 to -7.
the Bears. Oh, when the Bears go bearing down.